Hi everybody and welcome to another shootout video. My name is Stu Harrison. We're here at the Merriam Piano Studio just outside of Toronto, Canada, and today we are going to be comparing the Yamaha P125 to Roland's FP10. These are the two titans of the 88-note entry-level category right now. We're going to be talking about how their actions compare. We're going to be talking about the different sound setups, how they create those piano tones, speakers, features. We're going to be covering it all. So thank you very much for joining us. If it's the first time to the channel, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate the support. Let's get started right away. So as we mentioned, sitting in front of me today is the Yamaha P125 on my left, and we've got the Roland FP10 on my right. If you're a parent and you've been thinking about a really good quality but inexpensive digital piano, there is no way that you are not going to be coming across one or both of these in your searches, looking through reviews, piling through all sorts of Amazon pages, trying to figure out what the best price is and which one of these two might be a better fit. And so this video is to shed a little bit of light on what the actual differences are that are going to matter to a piano student, and maybe when the Yamaha might wind up being a better fit, or perhaps when the Roland might be a better fit. So once again, thank you very much for joining us on the video today. Let's start first with the action, because for a piano student, a piano teacher is going to care more about the feel of the instrument than almost any other feature on there. Most piano teachers aren't going to care too much about how many sounds it has or what type of furniture it has. Mostly what they're concerned about is the action. The reason is, of course, one of the very first skills that you need to learn as a piano student is how to hold your hand properly, how to curve those fingers nicely, something that I try to do but don't always remember to do. But as a student, you're always trying to get your students to keep those fingers nice and curved. And of course, how to develop enough muscle control that you can really create this beautiful palette of softs and louds just by using either a more strong muscle use or a softer muscle use on the key. And so the touch on a piano really helps to give a student the physical feedback on how they're doing, and it's their interface with the instrument. So it's a big deal. Both of these have weighted, graded 88-note actions. So this is kind of a generic category of action where the amount of pressure it takes to put the key in motion is approximately the same as what it takes you to do that on an acoustic piano. So both the FP10 and the P125 have that. Now, in terms of how they feel, these have quite different responses and quite different tactile feels between the P125 and the FP10. This action is called a GHS action from Yamaha. It is a weighted action, but there are a couple of things that it does not have that the FP10 does have. So on the P125, you have essentially a shiny white plastic finish on the top and a matte finish on the black key to sort of give it a little bit both a difference in visual, so that your eye can more quickly tell the difference between the black and the white keys. You'd think the color is enough, but actually when your eye is really going quickly over the key, it's helpful for the black keys not to pick up the reflection of any surrounding lights. So you've got a bit of a difference in terms of the texture between the two, and you've got the matte finish on the black key. But in terms of the actual feel, the Yamaha definitely does not have as much pressure pushing your finger back up as what I find on the Roland. And there's no escapement on the Yamaha either on the way down. Now, escapement is kind of a mechanical simulation that happens on some digital piano actions that make it feel a little bit closer to a real acoustic piano. I'm dramatically oversimplifying here, but essentially there's a little bit of an extra click about 2/3 of the way down that you're going to feel on the Roland that you do not feel on the Yamaha. So there is a bit of an authenticity difference between those two. And my general impressions after playing the Yamaha for a couple hours is certainly it's a satisfying action to play, and it's definitely a lot better than getting something that's not weighted. But my fingers were fatiguing a little bit easier on the Yamaha than playing on the Roland, and I have to think that it's probably because, for whatever reason, I'm not feeling as much back pressure on the key on the return stroke as I am on the way down. Over on the Roland, this action is called a PHA-4, and one of the best things I like about the Roland FP10 is that it has exactly the same action design and an action build that you get even up to about a $2,000 Roland piano. So Roland has not skimped or hasn't kind of shaved anything off the action you're getting in the FP10. It's exactly the same one as you would get if you were going all the way up to like an FP60 or even the one that you're going to find in the RP501. That's pretty remarkable. So in terms of the, we were talking about the texture on the key, you're also getting an ivory simulated texture on the top of the white key, and then the black keys are actually pretty similar between the Yamaha and the Roland. The Roland does have that escapement that we were just talking about is missing on the Yamaha. And there does seem to be a more of an authentic kind of hammer-generated push back up the key when I'm playing this. So this one feels kind of a little bit spongy, whereas this one feels a bit, not springy, but it feels more deliberate. The mechanism feels a little more deliberate there. Now, of course, with all actions, you get used to what you're in front of. So if for any reason you're already used to a Yamaha action, I'm sure the P125 is going to feel very satisfying. But if you have already had experience in front of an acoustic, or you're using potentially, this instrument as a practice instrument, but there's going to be frequent use of an acoustic, I'd have to give this particular comparison to the FP10 in terms of comparing actions. So GHS action, no textured white keys, no escapement, and a little bit of a spongier, slower repetition or response. Over on the Roland, you've got the escapement happening, you've got the textured white keys, and a little bit more of a back pressure on the key, creating a slightly faster response. Let's move on to sound. So now let's talk about the sound differences between these two instruments. The Yamaha is equipped with two 7-watt speakers. I'm quite impressed with the quality of the speakers on the Yamaha for 7 watts. I feel like they're pretty efficient. You're getting a lot of sound out of those 7-watt speakers. And in terms of the tone generator, they're using their CFX grand sample set in there, and they've got the polyphony turned all the way up to 192. For those of you who are not familiar with what polyphony is or why that even matters, polyphony refers to the number of notes that the piano can simultaneously generate and sustain before it has to start cutting ones off to add more at the same time. So in other words, if I was to do this, that's basically like 88 notes are now sustaining. So I could essentially go up and down and a little bit back up again before its tone generator runs out of juice and it has to start cutting certain. So that's plenty. You are never, ever, ever going to use up more than 192 notes under 99.9% of playing situations. You're never going to use up more than 192, especially for the type of repertoire you are likely to be using on a piano like this. If it were only piano, there's no need for that whatsoever, quite frankly, for this level. The reason the polyphony is probably much higher is this is equipped with rhythms, and you've got the ability to play layers over top of the rhythms as well. So every single time it's generating a new sound, whether that's the hit of a drum or a bass note or anything like that, that all counts towards that polyphony. So when you start layering 3 or 4 things on top of one another, now 192 actually does become relevant. So that's likely why Yamaha made the decision to do that. I find that the piano tone is very clean. very balanced. Honestly, it sounds like a lot of other Yamahas I've played, so I'm not hearing really much of a difference there. It's a highly functional, very satisfying piano sound. Fairly simple. It's not like a super complex upper harmonic thing going on, but to be honest, again, for somebody who's just starting out, probably not going to miss that. You've got 3 variations per tone that you can use on that, and so the default piano, which you were just hearing, you can turn these variations on. So they're all quite nice. One thing I'm going to mention, if you're hearing a bit of a click at home in the video, here's why. The Yamaha comes with a basic switch pedal. To be honest, the Roland also comes with a basic switch pedal, and it's this kind of plastic thingy that pops around the floor, and if you are wearing shoes at all, you really, really hear it. So whether it's the Yamaha you decide to go for or the Roland you decide to go for, I would strongly suggest that you invest in a proper sustain pedal, which both Yamaha and Roland sell. Makes the experience quite a bit nicer. So this is what you're hearing. Moving on to the electric piano sounds that the Yamaha's got. Pretty decent Rhodes as well. Kind of a DX7 sound from the 80s, which I like. Which is like a Wurlitzer sound. Really nice lush pad there too. And a nice selection of organs. And vibes. And then a whole string section and a couple of bass tones. So a pretty decent suite of onboard sounds, and they're all high quality. Yamaha has not skimped on the quality of the sample that they're loading up on this, even though it is a relatively inexpensive model. Let's hop over to the Roland. Now the Yamaha has the Roland beat when it comes to the sheer number of the sounds that they've got. The Roland, I think, has maybe 1 or 2 less than what the Yamaha has, but just like the Yamaha, the quality of the sounds is very, very high. So this is the default piano sound. And then, of course, you have the different piano tones. Also has a couple of E-pianos. I do kind of find that to be a bit more authentic than the Rhodes sound on the Yamaha for my personal preferences. And then this is kind of more of a DX7 thing, which I think the Yamaha has a slightly better one of. So we're back and forth. And then of course we've got some harpsichord stuff, vibraphone, organs, and strings. All slightly different from one another, but of very similar quality. Talking about the piano engine on the Roland. Now, on paper, this is a little bit deceiving because the Roland has a polyphony of just 96. And we also, you heard me mention that the Yamaha has a polyphony of 192. So this would suggest up front that the Yamaha has a dramatically more powerful tone processor than the Roland. That would not be entirely accurate to state it in this way, because even though this can process more notes at the same time, it seems like what's going on with each individual note or each individual tone on the Roland is a lot more complex than what's happening on the Yamaha. So you're kind of picking between quantity versus quality. On the Roland, and especially if you pull up their piano designer, you actually have the ability to edit well over a dozen parameters to do with that piano sound. So you're able to edit things like how high the piano lid is open, and the string resonance, and the damper resonance, and all kinds of stuff that are synthesized elements that have been added on top of the sample set that the Roland is driven off of. So there's a far more complex wave structure and more elements that you're able to control, modify, play with on the Roland than you are on the Yamaha. As a result, the polyphony overall is lower because there's just more going on per note. So that is definitely worth mentioning. From a speaker standpoint, the Roland is slightly less powerful than the Yamaha. The Roland has 6-watt speakers, whereas the Yamaha, as I mentioned, has 7-watt speakers. Unlike the Yamaha that's got the speakers that are facing up towards you, which is kind of nice, I find you get a little bit more bang for the buck when you've got a direct line of sight to the speaker. The Roland FP10 actually has the speakers pointing down, so you do get a little bit more room resonance, but the room is going to suck up more of the power of the sound. Let's talk about the difference in features now between these two, beyond the differences in the piano tone and the speakers. The Yamaha has a couple of feature areas on it that the Roland does not. And let's remember the Yamaha is a little more expensive than the Roland, so this is not precisely apples to apples. The P125 kind of falls halfway between the Roland FP30 and the Roland FP10. The P125 has onboard rhythms, and the rhythms are done really well. It's hard to find any rhythm that doesn't feel totally functional and enjoyable to play along. And I like the default settings that Yamaha has for how it follows or how it establishes what chord you're playing. It's very intuitive. It's a lot of fun to play. And it seems like there's close to 20 on here. So on and so forth. Quite a bit of fun. It also has a basic recording feature, so you can output MIDI and audio straight to the computer through a USB connection, or of course record the USB to a USB key that's plugged into that. That's also very cool. And it's got a couple of funny things on here called Sound Boost, which I think, from the best of my ability, is essentially a compression setting. And then, very handy, it's got discrete audio outputs that are totally separate from the headphone jack, and the ability to turn the speakers on and off independent of whether anything's plugged into the other jacks. That's really also quite a cool feature. Over on the Roland, we do not have any rhythm settings. We do not have the ability to turn the speakers on or off, and we do not have any discrete audio outs. We also do not have the ability to plug in a USB key. So this is where it starts to become a matter of priority, what you value in this instrument. And so let's just quickly summarize the differences between these two instruments. So this is sitting about $100 less than the P125, and here's what you're getting. You are getting, I think probably objectively, but definitely in my opinion, a more sophisticated piano engine. that's generating a lot more overtones and the ability to control a lot of the different components of the piano tone. You're getting a more advanced piano action with the escapement, with the ivory simulated feel, and I think the weighting is also just a little bit, seems a little bit more satisfying if you're already used to an acoustic feel. And then you've got a decent suite of onboard sounds, and last but not least, you've got a Bluetooth radio that's built in so that you can connect this through MIDI, Bluetooth MIDI onto Roland's companion app, the Piano Partner 2, the Piano Designer, and all kinds of other apps that you can find on the App Store. On the Yamaha side, we've got slightly more sounds, we've got onboard rhythms, we've got onboard recording, and just a few extra bells and whistles like discrete audio outs, speakers on and off. They both come with the music stands that are plugged right in there, and they are both available with matching stands. So, like, who is a better candidate for the FP10 versus the P125? Well, this is how I would summarize this. If whoever is going to be using this is primarily interested in using this as a piano, if 80–90% of what's going to be happening here is either learning the piano on this instrument, or if this is a secondary instrument for somebody who is already a piano player, and you're going to be going through either some formal instruction or you're really trying to work on a proper piano technique, I think the Roland FP10 is the instrument for you. This is definitely a stronger action and definitely more sophisticated tone engine that's built into a very compact package, but there's not much more than that. You're essentially getting the piano guts, and it's no frills beyond that, unless of course the Bluetooth is something that's indispensable for you. On the Yamaha side, you do have a more well-rounded set of features that's going to be possibly more entertaining overall for somebody who just wants to experience piano and isn't necessarily going to be going hardcore learning on the piano, and the extra variations and the extra rhythms are going to be something of benefit. Between these two, you may wind up tipping on the 125. Of course, if those extra features are something that you really want, but you liked the idea of a more complex piano tone and the better action, then maybe the FP30, for about $100 more than this guy, is where you want to investigate a little bit further. And of course, we have those videos on the channel. Please investigate those and anything else that you happen to see. So that's a wrap up on our FP10 Yamaha P125 shootout video. Thank you very much for joining us once again. My name is Stu Harrison. This has been Merriam Pianos. And once more, if this is the first time you've been to the channel, as we said before, please subscribe. We really appreciate the support. We'd love to see you back for another piano video shortly.